Welcome to my channel, Worldwise. I don't think people understand the sheer scale of Australia's Great Emu War. The government had a plan. They encouraged returned soldiers to become farmers. Settle the land, they said. Grow wheat. Prosper. Thousands of ex-servicemen, brave chaps who had faced bullets and bombs, now faced a different kind of frontier. They were given plots of land, mostly in Western Australia. This was marginal country. Not exactly prime real estate for farming, but hope was a powerful fertilizer back then. Then came the 1930s, and with them the Great Depression. Wheat prices, which had been the farmer's lifeline, suddenly plummeted. Imagine growing a field of golden wheat, working your fingers to the bone, only to find it was worth next to nothing. The government had promised support, subsidies for the wheat, but these promises were slow to materialize. Farmers were struggling. To make matters worse, nature decided to join the economic crisis. A severe drought settled over Western Australia. The land, already tough, became parched and unforgiving. Rain simply forgot to fall. Crops withered in the fields before they could even dream of being harvested. Water sources dried up. The sun beat down relentlessly, baking the earth into a cracked, dusty wasteland. Farmers watched their livelihoods shrivel before their very eyes. Many were on the brink of ruin, facing foreclosure, wondering how they would feed their families, and they needed a miracle. What they got instead, well, that was something else entirely. Enter the emu. Now, an emu is quite a bird. It's big, really big, the second largest bird in the world, in fact, after its cousin the ostrich. Think of a feathered tank, but with surprisingly spindly legs that can carry it at quite a clip. They are native to Australia, a proper Aussie icon, really. Usually they wander about the outback, minding their own business, pecking at this and that. They have their routines, their migration patterns. For thousands of years they had roamed the continent, largely unbothered by humans trying to grow wheat in neat little rows. But things were changing. In 1932, an estimated 20,000 of these large flightless birds decided their traditional migration route conveniently intersected with the newly developed farming areas of Western Australia, specifically the Campion district, where those struggling soldier settlers were trying to eke out a living. The emus arrived, saw the cultivated lands, and presumably thought, well, isn't this nice? A veritable feast laid out just for us. The impact was immediate and devastating. These weren't just a few birds having a nibble. This was an army of 20,000 hungry, 30-kilogram birds. They descended upon the wheat fields. They ate the crops. Sir George Pearce, the Minister for Defence. He must have blinked a few times when he heard the request. You want us to do what now? Fight birds? But these weren't just any farmers. They were returned soldiers, men who had served their country. There was a certain obligation, perhaps a touch of sympathy for their plight. Plus, the emus were causing genuine, widespread agricultural damage. This wasn't just a minor nuisance. It was a serious economic threat to an already battered industry. So, after some consideration, Sir George agreed. Yes, the army would help. The plan was hatched. The military would provide the machine guns and the gunners. The farmers, for their part, would cover the costs of food, accommodation and transport for the soldiers, and, crucially, the ammunition. This seemed like a fair deal to the desperate settlers. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery was put in charge of this rather unusual operation. He was given 2 Lewis machine guns. These were serious weapons, capable of firing hundreds of rounds a minute. They had seen action in the Great War. Surely they would be more than a match for a bunch of birds. With Major Meredith came a couple of soldiers to operate the guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The thinking was straightforward. The machine guns would mow down the emus in large numbers. Quick, efficient, problem solved. The Grand Offensive began on November 2nd, 1932. Major Meredith and his team headed to the Campion district. This was where the EMU concentration was reportedly highest. The soldiers encountered a group of about 50 emus. 50. Not quite the 20,000, but a start. This will be easy, they probably thought. The Lewis guns were set up. The soldiers took aim. The order was given. Fire! The guns chattered, spitting out bullets. The farmers watched, full of hope. This was it. Salvation by machine gun. Except it wasn't quite like that. Emus, it turns out, are not stationary targets, and they are surprisingly smart. Or at least, very good at not getting shot. When the bullets started flying, the emus didn't just stand there, they scattered, they ran, and boy can they run! Up to 50 kilometers per hour, they zigged, they zagged, they split into smaller groups, making them incredibly difficult targets for machine guns designed to deal with massed infantry. The soldiers fired and fired, but the emus just weren't cooperating with the plan. After the first barrage, the results were, to put it mildly, disappointing. Perhaps a dozen birds were killed, out of 50, with hundreds of rounds fired. Major Meredith noted that the birds seemed almost bulletproof, unless hit at very close range. Their tough feathers and thick skin offered surprising protection. The Lewis guns, so effective against men, were proving rather inefficient against these feathered sprinters. The element of surprise was lost. Section 5. The Emus' Revenge, Round 2 and Tactical Birds. The initial reports filtering back from the front lines were not good. The newspapers, both in Australia and overseas, picked up on the story with glee. Soldiers battle emus and lose, headlines like that. It was becoming a bit of a national embarrassment. Major Meredith himself commented on the emus' uncanny ability to survive. He said with a touch of grudging admiration that if they had an emu division with the same bullet-carrying capacity, it would face any army in the world. He even suggested the emus had leaders, wily old birds that would keep watch and warn the others. They seemed to employ guerrilla tactics under pressure from the negative publicity and the clear lack of success. The military operation was officially called off on November the 8th, just 6 days after it began. The soldiers packed up their Lewis guns and went home. The Fox movie-tone cameraman presumably had some rather unexciting footage. The farmers were understandably dismayed. The emus were still there, still eating their wheat, still breaking their fences. The problem hadn't gone away. In fact, with the army gone, the emus probably breathed a collective sigh of relief and got back to serious feasting. But the farmers were persistent. They renewed their pleas to the government. The emu plague was worse than ever. Section 6. A change of plans, bounties and civilian efforts. By early December 1932, it was clear that deploying the army with machine guns was not the most effective solution to the emu problem. Major Meredith was withdrawn for good. The Great Emu War, at least the military phase, was officially over. The government turned to a more traditional method of pest control, the bounty system. They offered a reward for each emu killed, putting the onus on the farmers and local civilians. Armed with rifles and local knowledge, these bounty hunters proved more effective than the soldiers. The bounty system continued for many years, gradually reducing emu numbers in agricultural districts. It was a slow process, but it had a significant impact on controlling the population, where it mattered most to the farmers. The emus, however, had certainly made their mark on history. Section 7. Laughingstock or cautionary tale. The world reacts. News of Australia's Emu War spread far and wide, and the world found it rather amusing. Newspapers in Britain and the United States ran stories highlighting the comical aspect of a modern army being unable to defeat birds. Cartoonists had a field day. Imagine the headlines: Australia invaded by emus, army helpless. It was a bizarre and funny story from a faraway land. Soldiers with machine guns being outwitted by fast-running emus was inherently humorous. For Australia, it was a moment of slight international embarrassment. Nobody likes to be the butt of a global joke, especially when the military is involved. There were questions asked in the Australian Parliament. Conservationists raised concerns about the slaughter of native wildlife, though emus were classified as vermin due to agricultural damage. The affair highlighted a belief that military might could solve any problem, even one posed by nature. Beneath the laughter, there were serious undertones. The Emu War, despite its absurdity, was born out of genuine desperation. Farmers were facing ruin, their livelihoods were at stake. The government was trying, however clumsily, to respond to a real crisis. The incident also highlighted the resilience and adaptability of the emu. These were not just dumb birds, they were creatures perfectly suited to their environment, capable of surprising intelligence and tactical evasion when threatened. They weren't easily intimidated, even by machine guns. The story also served as a rather strange footnote in military history. Section 8. After the dust-settled legacy of the Emu War. The Great Emu War of 1932 left a lasting impression. While the military campaign failed, bounty systems reduced emu populations. Emus are still plentiful across Australia today. The war led to stronger, more effective fencing. Farmers learned prevention was better than calling in the army. The Emu War remains a quirky, utterly Australian story. It's a tale of desperate farmers, well-intentioned soldiers, and cunning birds. Australia learned lessons and the world got a good story. Watch my next video now.